Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money, hopefully. Load up discussion today. We have Bitcoin back to 105K. We've got gold back to 4.1K. So we'll be talking general chat around the majors. We've got Monad releasing their public sale details for its ICO, which will take place on Coinbase Launchpad at a $2.5 billion FDV. So two-part headline there. One, new Coinbase Launchpad for ICOs, and two, Monad, the highly anticipated new L1 coming out with its own ICO right after Mega ETH. So two and a half times at a higher valuation. So we'll discuss that. Rahim will break that down. And then finally, Uniswap proposes fee switches to be turned on. Uni token is up 25% on the news. We'll be talking all of these headlines and more as usual. Today, I've got Legendary and Rahim in the co-host seats with me. We're ready to get into it. Just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is incredibly, incredibly risky. As you might have seen, if you were a spot holder of Zcash, over the last 24 hours. We'll talk about that and more. This is not financial advice. We don't know anything for sure, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Tuesday. It is the 11th of November. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM Jim, doing quite well. Excited for the show today, but I'm in a confused state when it comes to my portfolio.
Okay.
So Oxy and I have been chatting before the show, and I was like, I don't know what the next play is. I don't know what the next thing is, which I want to do other than, waiting for Mega and doing stuff on there. I missed the Z cash trade. I didn't enter that. I'm like, I didn't do the meme coin shenanigans, which we've seen the last couple of days, some of them popping up. I'm still holding my robotics bags. They are okay, I would say. I didn't do the X412. I don't know. Like, either I'm wondering if I just lost my game. I mean, okay, I did Mega ETH and I have a very good allocation, which I'm waiting for to realize that. But that is also a result of like past work of, me having done stuff for 6 months, posting, acquiring bad buns, working with Euphoria and other things. So I don't have a current play where I'm like, okay, this is where I'm grinding. This is where I'm spending time in. This is where I'm educating myself. I'm not in the BitTensor trenches. I know I should be. Funky's probably giving me the look because I still haven't watched the documentary, still haven't educated myself on that. So I don't know if I'm like kind of complacent or I don't know what to do right now. This weird state of mind when it comes to my portfolio. And I'm saying that with a portfolio which is still close to all-time highs. So, it's like maybe complaining at a high level or like commenting on a high level, but that's where my head is at the moment.
I think the market's changed, man. I think the market's changed where I think two things have changed. One, portfolio size has changed, which means you're probably a little bit more protective. And then B, the market's changed in a way where there isn't as many things to be doing all the time. Like, I think we, roughly speaking, decided that there were a bunch of protocols and things that we were interested in maybe 6-7 months ago. I have this tweet going around from, I don't know, June or April or May or something, where it was like Mega ETH, Infinex, Yeet, and I don't know, maybe there was a couple of others, which I really liked. And I think those few things were the things that I was going to decide to focus on in some way, whether it's from a content perspective, an educational perspective, thinking that those protocols will be valuable whenever they come out. And then, so, we've focused on those. And then the thing is that it reaches an expiry date, right? It gets to the point where when it's TG or in the close to TG, and I believe Yeet is scheduled for Q1 2026. Obviously, Mega is coming sooner rather than later. And I think Infinex have been putting out content to say that they're on their death march to TG as well. So, it's time to refresh. It's time to update the set of valuable protocols that we think are going to be the next set now. And I think we haven't necessarily had the chance to process that. It was hard to process that whilst you're still like waiting for the ones that you've either already invested in some way or produced content for in some way. And so it's hard to maybe psychologically move on until you've really realized that stuff. But I think that is part of the process. So, and then maybe the final thing, which I mentioned a while ago, is it's a market where people are coming to pick up the checks now. Like, you've put in the work, you've made your investments, time to pick up the checks. Monad gave out their card allocations, and people are going to come in and pick up that check. Now they're doing an ICO. People are going to want to invest, and then they're going to want to pick up the check. Mega, there's going to be a check to get picked up. all of the airdrops are coming to fruition now, Q4, Q1. And so I think there's like a big exhalation in the market where people are just like, okay, well, let's see all these TGEs out, and then we kind of assess. How does that make sense to you? Then I'd be curious for Rahim's thoughts.
It makes a ton of sense, and I factually agree. Also, after we get Rahim in, want to get Oxy in as well, who has his hand up. The thing is, and probably that's the reason why I'm struggling with, I'm just used to click the buttons. You know,
That's the thing. You're used to clicking the buttons.
all of the things I'm listening to you, you're making sense. It's all very like rational, but I'm like, dude, I just want to click buttons. I don't feel the same if I'm not clicking my buttons.
Yeah, see, my strategy in general has A, always been to click less buttons than you, and actually B, I'm trying to click less buttons more in general. So I'm going to be reducing the number of buttons I click more generally. Doesn't mean I'm going to be reducing my exposure. Still making significant bets on the industry and on the internet, but I think that is what I want my style to be going forward. So I think that's something. I think what's going to happen for you, Ledger, is I think Mega ETH is going to launch. And actually, to be honest, I'm actually intrigued by Monad. Given that I think we're in this setup now where it's like Mega ETH v Monad, one ICO finishes, the other one starts. I'm actually, and given that there's not a ton of other stuff going on, I'm open to getting a bit more intrigued by Monad. Obviously, historically, like we're closer to Bread, right? Obviously, because of our friendship and the fact he's on the show with us all the time. So we've just naturally learned more about Mega, but I'm open to learning more about Monad. And given that there's it's going to be these two things pitted against each other for a bit, I think I'm open to going and exploring around there. So if you're going to click buttons, I reckon whenever Monad launches, there's going to be a ton of things probably incentivized to do that. And then I think the same will happen for Mega. No, don't you think that's the case?
Yeah, that's true. But like both are, I mean, okay, Monad is like what, 13 days away, so maybe a bit of patience is
13 days, man. You can wait 13 days. My God.
2 weeks. That's like, a year in real life.
Go back to playing golf. You haven't played golf in a while, and we still haven't seen any evidence of this swing of yours
that is
in
not
public.
true. I send you swing video. Oh, you said in public, yeah.
Yeah, we need to see the public. We go work on a workable public version of your swing in the next 13 days before one of these chains launch. Let's do that. Okay. Let's do that. Right, Oxy, we want to hear from Oxy in a sec. Ryan, we want to bring you in first. How are you doing, my man? Any thoughts on this chat on like what's next? Are you feeling this same kind of bit of exhaustion and trying to think about what's next?
Yeah, first and foremost, such an hilarious resolution to Legendary's dilemma. And like he's like, oh, I started with not knowing how to do with my portfolio, ended up getting that, oh, I should maybe focus on golf. But like when you started speaking, I was like, yeah, I want to take like the other side of this conversation is that
Okay.
I feel like you, including like everyone else, I feel like is, at least for me, I feel like I'm becoming more of like a evolved investor. Like I feel like now we've realized we had like longer narratives like a year ago. We had the AI narrative that went on for like a couple of months. You had the meme coin super cycle. Those narratives went a couple of months, and we all thought those narratives would last long. And then you realize that they just keep tapering down. They're way more quicker. They went from 3 months to 2 months, 2 months to 1 month. And I think we've just become like pretty savvy of it. That you're like, okay, you know what? Yes, the privacy meta started. If you got on it, great. If you missed it, that's fine. Like, you just don't want to like chase it because like everything has been lasting for lesser and lesser periods. So maybe you don't want to click these buttons. I feel like you have an angel and devil on your shoulders right now. Your old self is telling that, oh, I need to click buttons. Whereas like the evolved version of you is saying, no, Ledge, you're good. You're playing it smart. You have way more profitable gains coming out of Mega ETH, probably out of like the Monad pre-sale and stuff. So I think, yeah, couple that with like the exhaustion and just like keeping up with the space, this and that. I think it's completely okay for you to feel that.
Yeah, I think that's I like the analogy of the angel and devil on the shoulder. Oxy, wanted to bring you in on the conversation. How are you doing, my man? What's your thoughts on this kind of fork in the road, maybe?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I need to see some public legendary golf swings on the timeline in the short term here. But so yesterday it made me think of, I was on a call yesterday and made me think of your analogy B-check of like people are trying to get their bag and they're like rushing to the door to try and get like raise money or do whatever. I was on a call, a BD call the other day, and they were like, "Oh, we're trying to make a private market platform where you trade like private companies in India." And it was like the most niche thing, and it's like a beta of a beta. And they're like, "Oh, we want you guys to do our proof of reserves by the end of like next week." And this happens like weekly, where people are like, "We need to get an audit done. We need to get a proof of reserves done in the next like 5 days. We need this to go fundraise or whatever, or we need this for our get raise that we're trying to do." And it just becomes more and more real when you're on this call and they're like, "Okay, we need this done because we're raising the following week or whatever," and we're just like, "Dude, that's just not going to happen." But it feels more and more often, and I think you're spot on with that. It's like people are desperate to raise this money and get their bag right now.
Yeah, we can feel it. We can feel it on the media side. We can feel it on a variety of ways. It's just it's very obvious as Bitcoin is like clinging on to 100. And look, it could very well go up expeditiously here and now. Like you can't control that, right? But it's been a bit temperamental recently, and with AI stocks, the conversation around that topping out. I think SoftBank just came out today and said that they've sold their full position in Nvidia. I don't know if we've got confirmation on that. I think I saw that this morning. Yeah, and OpenAI saying they want to raise they want to IPO at $1 trillion or something insane. Like this is very like everyone trying to get their bag right at the end and start to figure out how they can exit for as much as possible. And it does not surprise me then, Oxy, on the business side too, that you're getting these people saying, right, get this to us right now. We need this in Q4 whilst Bitcoin is still above 100K, just in case, because at the moment things are still relatively healthy. Bitcoin's down 10%-ish, 10 to 15% from its highs. So it's still healthy-ish. And if you're running probabilities, it'd be far worse to be raising if Bitcoin dips further down, when it's been in this higher position for quite some time. So I think that's definitely part of it. But thinking forward and maybe on the more opportunistic side, I was actually thinking about the same thing yesterday, Ledge, and I was thinking I'm kind of looking forward to Mega, and I'm more open to Monad than I was before. I think there'll be things to do. I think there'll be incentivized stuff. I think they're going to have to go head to head, which actually kind of makes it more interesting to me because I feel like they're going to have to do a little bit of back and forth and trying to outdo each other, which should make the incentivized aspect of it a little bit better. I am surprised, and maybe we'll talk about this later, that their price is 2.5 times the Mega ETH public sale valuation, but then maybe not surprised because obviously the VCs in Monad were in at a much higher valuation too. But maybe we'll dive into all of that a little bit more. But I do think Mega versus Monad could be a nice, and at least until the end of the year, conversation as they kind of both go into mainnet whenever they're ready. But unless there's anything else, guys, should we get into it as normal?
Yeah, just quickly, I think just to take like an opposite conversation for this, I was reading this post by the Coinbase letter today, what they were talking about like last week, Nvidia stock was down by 800 billion. And then it's up by 500 billion back. And essentially like the post was talking about that there are people who are buying the AI dips, and it's something that there are like a lot of people doing. And it kind of like quickly goes back to like I've been trying to like see both sides of the equation, whether it's on the AI side, whether it's on the crypto side. I was reading this post by someone today, and the gentleman was like, okay, let me get this straight. We had the largest liquidation event ever. We had the government shut down, which was the longest ever. You have like BTC veiled selling like crazy, and we are still hovering around 105K. How are you guys bearish? And it's just like taking a flip side to everything that you're saying, that I feel like it's so easy for you to like pick one narrative and look at the market from that side. And obviously it's important to objectively look at both points and kind of like form your own thesis,
I think that's fair. Another, I know we're near a top, but the sentiment feels like you're at a bottom, right? It's like we're trying to find a bottom at the top, which is kind of an odd scenario where people keep thinking, oh my God, are we going to go lower? Should I catch this knife? And that's usually what happens when you're actually at the bottom. Like when Bitcoin went from 60 something K to 16, you're thinking, oh God, is this the bottom? Is it going to go any lower? It feels like that somehow, rather than the euphoria of it being at the top, which is when we were 120, and compared with when we were at 67 or whatever. So I know what you mean. It feels like this kind of bottoming out, and given everything that's happened, the fact that we're still where we are is pretty significant. And I think there's a little bit of that changing of the guard, where you have all of these old, big, large holders selling to the institutions who are going to be just holding, I think. And then, you just got to keep one eye on these DATs. It's these DATs that I don't trust, to be honest. That's the thing. I don't trust the ETH DATs who are trading under MNAV not to start selling their ETH, for example. That's like the big thing in my mind, and we've already seen some examples of it. So I take your points, though. That's a good alternative way or perspective to share. Right, let's get into the roundup, though, to get you up to speed with everything that you need to know. Today, we'll start with the price action, as always. So Bitcoin is down 1% to 105K. ETH is flat around 3.5K. XRP is down a couple of percent to $2.46. BNB is down 1% to $980. Sol is down a couple of percent as well to 163. Hyperliquid is down 4% back to $40. Pretty solid, or in that $40 region. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have a bit of a pullback today as well. Doge is down a couple of percent. Pepe is down a couple of percent. Trump is flat after being up 15% on the week, actually. So Trump's probably one of the big outperformers across all memes over the last week. Bonk is down a couple of percent. Pengu's down a couple of percent. SPX is down 5%. Fartcoin is down 10%. And Rect is flat. So a bit of a mixed bag on the meme coin side, but mostly on the way down. Getting into the headlines, which we'll be talking about today, we have we've got Bitcoin back to 105K. Gold is actually back to 4.1. So Ledger will do a bit of a roundup there. We've got Monad releasing public sale details for its ICO to take place on the new Coinbase launchpad at 2.5 bill FDV. We'll discuss that. And final headline, we'll talk about Uniswap proposes a fee switch to be turned on. Finally, it's been discussed for so long. Uni token went up almost 25% on the news. In other token action, got Avicii up 53% to $4.45. Zcash down 22%, all the way down to $487. And MetaDAO up 26% to $8.60. So there's still action. There's still like fairly significant action in the market at the moment if you want to be trading these things. I just think it's incredibly difficult one to call when these things are going up or down, and for what reason. I find it very, very sporadic at the moment. Some notable sales. CryptoPunks, this nice CryptoPunk sold for 36.9 ETH, knitted cap. Some of the really nice ones are actually going pretty low now. Beeple GigaChad sold for 21 ETH. Xcopy Guzzler sold for 3.8 ETH. And the rest of the market, Penguins are under 6 ETH. Moonbirds are under 2. Nothing else really to note on the NFT side of things, I don't think. Getting into the rest of the roundup, we have US Treasury and IRS issuing new guidance to allow crypto ETPs to stake digital assets and distribute rewards. I think that is pretty big news. Neutral has just launched. It's a new synthetic dollar facilitating access to institutional grade OTC opportunities and delta neutral yield. I've got to be honest, hearing that, I mean, I kind of want to have them on the show one day to learn a bit more about that. That doesn't sound like a stable dollar as such, but I believe it's gets you access to opportunities which are fully hedged somehow. So kind of curious to see that. A very interesting way to package up a synthetic dollar. Would want to learn more. Jupiter announces integration with Robinhood wallet. Former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey reveals new company Square can now facilitate Bitcoin to Bitcoin payments. Vivek Ramaswamy's Strive buys 1,576 Bitcoin worth $162 million. That's another Bitcoin DAT. Tom Lee has added more than 110,000 of ETH in the last week as well. Moonbirds open a merch store with first capsule collection. And then finally, Bitcoin L2 Bob community sale goes live and will stay open for another day. So after a bit of a quiet day yesterday, there's a few more things going on in the market. Legendary. Before we get to the main headlines today, anything specifically catching your attention from around the market there?
Yeah, this neutral thing. Truth be told, I didn't read the Web3 roundup before the show today, so that's completely new to me. And I just looked up to see the market cap of NUSD, and apparently it's over 100 mil. It's at 120 mil. There's also the on-chain reserves. They do have a proof of that published and posted. I'm like, there's been pre-deposit vaults for that. People are earning and farming points, and apparently more than 100 mil did go into that, and I had no idea about that, never heard of that. So once again, goes to show, maybe linking back to our earlier conversation on the show, also how fragmented CT has become, that there's like pockets and pockets of opportunities, and that this is something that I would per se find interesting. Obviously, I need to read more to see how it works, but just from the description that you had in the roundup, it sounds like a protocol I would want to read and learn more about, but I've never heard about that. But $100 million worth of capital did go into that.
I agree with you. One of my other reactions, though, and maybe this is like, I don't know, part of the cycle where we are, part of a bit of fatigue in general, is that when again, and we need to read more for sure, and I'd love to get them on the show to discuss and find out more. But when you're saying something's a synthetic dollar, obviously Athena has pioneered the mainstream version of a synthetic dollar. I believe there were other versions before. Athena really took that idea, kind of cemented it into crypto during the course of this cycle. But you know very clearly where that yield is coming from, like how you get that synthetic dollar, how people are earning on top of it when you stake it for SUSDE. Whereas OTC opportunities, which are hedged at the back, it's not obvious to me that that's like as a reliable synthetic dollar as you would like. Maybe it's something, maybe at an early stage in the cycle, after I do a lot of research, I'd be really curious. At the tail end, or wherever we are in the cycle, like after a bit more fatigue of going through all these things, I'm a bit more hesitant to enter those types of things where I think the perceived risk is has rightly been identified as like a bit higher. I'd really want to get into what those OTC opportunities are, how that all works mechanically, to really give me some comfort. But as you said, 100 mils gone into it. It's not nothing. So there's clearly some interest in it, and it is kind of cool. Ultimately, I think we will see a variety of stablecoins backed by different things, and I think that is actually one of the really cool innovations. So I think net, I'm with you. I was just wanted to be a little bit bearish as usual at the moment, if that's okay. Rahim, what about you? Are you interested in anything from the roundup itself? Interested in anything otherwise? Seeing any other opportunities before we get into the main stuff today?
Yeah, I thought this Jupiter integration with like Robinhood was like rather fascinating. Again, just like one of those things, doesn't feel like it would be like towards the tail end of the cycle. Essentially, like a TLDR is they've integrated the Ultra API into Robinhood, so you can swap any of like the SPL contract coins on the Robinhood app. Couple of things pretty cool. I think on like a philosophical level, I think it's a good merger between like sexes and dexes and stuff. Something like I wouldn't have expected to come out of like Robinhood. Like in situations like this, you would see that maybe like they acquire something and they want to integrate it into their centralized ecosystem, but that's not that's not what they decide to do. I don't know like the specifics of it, but I just thought that okay, Robinhood is known to attract like a whole different group of audience with all the capital they brought with like SHIB and like some of the meme stuff back in the day. But I just thought like it was rather interesting to see that bridge of like a sex and a dex together to bring all of these like swaps. Something I would have expected to happen like during like the peak meme coin era. But it came in like way later on. But I still think it's kind of like a cool onboarding tool. I saw some people like really championing it, that okay, this is how you get like a lot of people who are involved in like sexes to be explore to the deck side of things, understand how these systems work. They have like an like an MEV bot protection thing and everything. So I thought this was kind of a cool announcement. Did not expect that.
Yeah, that is interesting. Interesting to see that. As I said, there's a bunch more interesting things going on today. I feel like the week needed a bit of a day to really kickstart after yesterday. One question I want to ask is again about Zcash. I wanted to bring it up yesterday. The price action has meant that you can't really ignore it. I know we kind of missed the trade as such because of a variety of factors, while not wanting to take on additional risk into because of where we are in the cycle, or what we perceive, where we perceive ourselves to be. But down 26% on the day to $463. This thing was as high as, I think it touched 700, right? One of the days it then pulled back, went back up again. Now it's back to 460. So this went as high as 700 a few days ago. It dipped all the way back down to 500, then went all the way back up to almost 700 again. Now it's back down to 463. Is there a sustainable narrative here, Legendary, or like I feel like in some ways you and maybe me were just like, look, we missed this one. Don't touch it. We missed it. I am kind of tempted as you are when you miss something so significant. But do you think there's something sustainable here, or to what extent do you even think this is just like a big influencer push? Like some really big names have decided to jump on this bandwagon and push it. Do you think, is this all it is, or do you think the underlying privacy narrative is going to sustain beyond November, December?
I think that the privacy narrative is such a difficult trade in the long term, with more and more regulation coming into the space. I think we said it for Zcash specifically, that you can't deposit to Binance anymore if you used shielded transactions with it. We had this news coming out of the EU that you can't from 2027 on, I think, do more than 10K of cash payments. You cannot have anonymous wallets in terms of that. If you withdraw money from a centralized exchange, you have to make to bring the proof that it's either your wallet that you're withdrawing to, because you deposit from that as well, or or disclose whose wallet that is and whose wallet that is. I think that's also like from a certain threshold. So the world is becoming more and more anti-privacy, and if anything, the original intent of crypto was to be private and was to have an alternative means of doing business, doing finance, doing transactions. But then at the same time, we've always been like, praying and hoping for mass adoption. And mass adoption can only work if this thing integrates into the real world. Like mass adoption could never play out in the way that suddenly a second shadow system of finance and a shadow society exists parallel to the real world and the original system. That's just not how things work, unfortunately. So that means that we are integrating crypto into everything. That also means that, payment providers, Visa, MasterCard, and others like this and find it more efficient, but they have to tackle it from a perspective that is compliant with existing and upcoming laws. And all of them don't like privacy too much. They have anti-money laundering regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So if I just tackle it from this serious perspective, super fascinating to find a privacy narrative. And it will be relevant to maybe even when you transact on chain, like to be more private with that and to not be like trackable to anyone, and to then disclose in KYC wallets to exchanges, to authorities when you need to. But I don't know if Zcash is to provide that. But that is also completely separate from the other part of your question, which is, how much that is an influencer push and how much that will continue to run and will be pushed again. That I can't speak if it's running back or if it's going down. If I were to just tackle it from a serious perspective, which I know is not the right thing to do for Zcash, because otherwise it wouldn't have gone to 730-ish so fast, then I do say that the whole privacy trend and narrative is a difficult one. There will be winners from that will somehow be compliant with existing and upcoming laws and legal structures. But if influencers will continue to push Zcash, and if this will continue to run, or if this has been it, I can't tell. I just not entrenched enough to be able to give a good answer to that. But as I was speaking, I did see both Funky and Oxy raising their hands on that.
I'll come to them in just one second. My thought on this is, I don't know what the end game is. Like in the end, people fought so hard for crypto. Well, at the beginning, crypto had these cypherpunk ideals, and people believed in, it was kind of anti-government, kind of anti-establishment. It was kind of building your own financial system outside of it. And then we basically did a hell of a lot of work, a lot of people, to get incorporated into it. And now you have ETFs, you have stablecoin payments. You can maybe some places even accept crypto itself as part of transactions. But as part of that deal, in order to access the traditional system, you need to KYC. You need to offboard your money easily into the real world. Other people will want to know. Governments are not trending in the direction, unfortunately, of being less lenient on this. If anything, in Europe, in UK, in probably around the world as well. I mean, Middle East is almost set up by default like this. Like, people need to know who you are and what you're transacting. And that's not me in support of the idea. That's just like the reality of what it is on the ground. So I don't know what the end point is of building out a purely privatized system when you're not going to be able to offboard, I don't think. And maybe I need to educate myself more on how people might propose to do that, how the real world can interact with the private world and be able to keep your funds private. I almost certainly need to educate myself more. That's just my instinctive view. But I'd be curious to go to Funky straight away, hear his thoughts, and then Oxy's got his hand raised too. Rahim will circle back to you as well if we have time, because we want to obviously get into the monad stuff as well, which you're going to lead on. Funky, welcome to the stage, my man. What are your thoughts? Am I wrong to be skeptical of privacy? What are your thoughts?
I don't think you guys are wrong. I think you're having a great conversation. I think, we've got to start with the base premise that privacy is a fundamental human right, and it's always going to exist in some form. I do somewhat disagree with Legendary in the sense that I feel we will have a bifurcated system where they will be running in parallel. And of course, the much larger of the two is going to be the sort of privacy solutions for the TradFi bros like Keta Network, or the new Midnight Network that's coming out that's been incubated by IOG. So, these things are going to exist because TradFi is going to demand that they have some level of privacy to shield their big transactions. I think because, though, to your point, B, with so much of the incredible government overreach or limitations, or look at the stablecoin that they're developing in the EU, that will necessitate some sort of privacy solution. And, I wouldn't worry too much about offboarding, because as our world's become increasingly digital, I can see more money just coming into crypto and staying there as a refuge, right? And giving people the freedom to transact however they see fit. There's a really interesting novel that he wrote back in 2018, Bill Laboon from the Web3 Foundation, and he basically kind of showed this, and it's, it shows its age, but basically Bitcoin is so valuable in this future where people don't really use it to transact, and they use Litecoin instead for their everyday transactions. But when they need to do things that they don't want the government to know about or whatever, they're using Monero in the book. So I could see a world in which that happens, where I'm not saying those coins in particular, but just like that there's some sort of parallel world where people do want to have some semblance of privacy, and they will continue to use things like Zcash, Monero, what have you.
Okay. Interesting. Definitely want to learn more about this whole area. Oxy, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts on the privacy narrative beyond, this specific move, and whether it's got some legs beyond that?
Yeah, no, I Funky makes some good points about just people like staying on crypto rails like for the foreseeable future and not necessarily worrying about this offboarding situation. I mean, you see it with TRIA and like neobanks and things like that. If I can transact normally in my everyday life using my crypto, and I don't have to worry about a SEC being worried about my shielded tokens, that's an interesting take. I haven't really dug into yet. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much else to add there. I guess Funky, that's an interesting point and got me thinking. I didn't want to touch on the IRS point, but maybe Rahim has something else to say on privacy.
Okay. My issue still is that if you say you have these crypto neobanks, fine, you don't need to offboard, but you have to have KYC'd somewhere in order to be able to get the money into the world. And this is what, like, I just don't fully get it. Like, in the end, it's like the deal crypto had to do with the devil in order to get to where it is now, is that you have to integrate at some point. And as part of that integration, it's very, very unlikely to me you can do that without KYC, and therefore maintain your privacy. And maybe privacy itself is even a spectrum. Maybe you accept KYC, you just need a bunch of the other regulations to that might be overreaching to reduce, but I'm just not sure what the end game is entirely at the moment. I just hear a lot of people talking about privacy is super important, but I need to learn what the end game is fully. Rahim, curious for your thought on the privacy thing, if you have one. Otherwise, we definitely need to get into Monad as well. Maybe one take on privacy, and then take us into Monad.
Just a quick one. I feel like in general with crypto, I feel like just going back to the cyberpunk analogy that you gave, I feel like if you look at crypto in the last 15 years, we've tried to like almost like, again, like don't attack me for this, but it's almost like we are taking that cyberpunk analogy and bringing a bit to reality and realizing that, okay, how do financial systems really work? Like, when the Bitcoin came out, they didn't have this concept of, okay, you can get yield from it, you could take like loans against it and stuff, but it is something that we do in the real world. So we are coming up with solutions to kind of do that with broader crypto. And comes the same thing to like privacy. Privacy is like a big conversation. In fact, if you see that podcast between Mert and Kevin, Mert is talking about like when the privacy thing hit him, he was at a conference where like he was around like physicians, like people from like the physics industry, mathematicians, and they were just talking with like a lot of the research thing that looking into privacy as a concept. And that's when it hit him that he was like, okay, this is like something we need to solve for. It's something like quickly. I remember Gainsey talking about that, like, the fact even when you're trading, even when you're leverage trading something on like Hyperliquid, if Hyperliquid doesn't come up with like a format where like you can basically make these transactions not available to the public, I don't know how like people will always like have an edge towards it. And like Astro is kind of going the opposite route. They are kind of like launching their chain, which is very much focused on privacy, and this is exactly what they want to do. So I definitely think privacy, with like all the safety regulation, going back to what Ledge is saying, is an important conversation to have.
I think you actually can do that on Hyperliquid. There's a product getting built now. I'm not sure where they are in their development. Silhouette, we were chatting to them a while back. I'm pretty sure you can. It gives you the opportunity to mask your Hyperliquid transactions. So it is being built. It's not like built in to Hyperliquid, but yeah, I think it's being built as we speak, because I think people do see the value in what you just described. Rahim, Oxy, final take here before we move it on. Just close the topic for us.
Super quick. I actually wanted to speak on the U.S. Treasury and IRS issued the new guidance on ETPs, or that includes ETFs, allowing for staking and distribution of rewards. I think this is a huge step forward. Currently, commodity ETFs like gold or oil, almost none of them distribute any kind of dividend. So the ETFs related to crypto being able to stake and then distribute rewards, I think, is a really interesting evolution to the product that people typically don't see in commodities like this. So I think that's a huge step forward for TradFi investors that are like, okay, if I'm going to distinguish between, okay, I'm going to buy a gold one or a oil one or what have you, if I'm going to be getting free cash flow from these like reward distributions, I think that's a really big pull. So just something interesting that I wanted to touch on, and I think it's a really important update.
Yeah, super interesting. Thanks for highlighting that. I thought that was pretty important as well. Didn't have it enough space as a headline, but thanks for highlighting. Okay, next headline, Rahim. We've got the big news that Monad released their public sale details for its ICO, and kind of a two-part piece. One, I think it'd be really helpful to know the details here. Like, what do we need to know? What are the details? What's the valuation? And then second, it's on the new Coinbase launchpad, which I also think is kind of news in itself. And there are a few interesting details around that. So what do we need to know here, Rahim? What do we need to take away?
So Coinbase came out yesterday announcing their launchpad with this idea of like, okay, this is like for retail, ICOs for retail, that you can come and buy tokens. This is not for bots, and this is not for flippers. That's like their video branding essentially was talking about. Pretty interesting. And like the first announcement that they came out is that the Monad sale will be happening on their platform. Just like a quick TLDR on Monad is, it's obviously like the most awaited chain this entire cycle. It's an L1, kind of works on the philosophies of Ethereum, except it has optimistic parallel execution, which is slightly different than Ethereum, to essentially have like faster processing times, but it has the same security and ethos of ETH. They are doing an evaluation of 2.5 billion. So like the sale goes live on 17th of November until the 22nd of November. So it's important to keep that from 9 a.m. Eastern time to 9 p.m. Eastern time on the November 22nd. They're doing 7.5% sale is essentially going to this round. They mentioned that, okay, one of the other things that's important to highlight, that Coinbase was like, even US can participate. As we know, historically, there have been a lot of pre-sales that people from the United States were not able to enter. So it is a kind of like showing that, okay, this is the progression of like US becoming way more like crypto friendly. Of course, it is pretty interesting to see that they've announced this launchpad, going back to the earlier thing that we said at the start of the show, at this point in the cycle. And if you look at the current pre-market prices, it's trading between 5.5 to 6 billion. It had a massive dip yesterday after the announcement, but it like quickly went back up. So people are definitely bullish, something to keep an eye out. But yeah, definitely very fascinating. The other key thing is that they mentioned that people who essentially sell their allocation within 30-day period will be penalized by not getting allocations for future ICOs. And of course, the timeline is speculating that they will be doing the base ICO on their platform. So definitely interesting mechanics we haven't seen in the space. But yeah, something to keep an eye out for the week.
Excellent set of details. You touched on all of the important bits, especially that last detail, which people might have missed, on the potential. And again, we don't know that for sure at all. The potential base ICO, which, given that it's Coinbase launching a launchpad, like it just makes so much sense. Everyone is trending away from airdrops now. Mega's not technically doing an airdrop. It's all this ICO early participation. Monad is doing a bit of an airdrop, but now they're doing their ICO as well. Everyone wants to raise from the community as early as possible at the most attractive valuation as possible. So why would Base not do the same thing whenever they're ready next year? Everything is trending in that direction. A couple of other additional points. Curious for Legendary's thoughts. I'm just going through the comments on the Monad tweet. Apex said, "Wait, this is a $200 million raise." Which is actually a colossal amount of money, right? And I guess the reason why it's so much, obviously, and the reason why it's so much more than any other raise that you're hearing about is because the starting valuation is so much higher. And even when Mega did theirs, I think they did 50 mil, right? And the valuation was at 1 bill. This is 2.5 times higher in terms of the FTV being raised at, and therefore it ends up being a lot more because that starting point is much higher. This one's actually for 7.5% of the total supply as well. But I mean, the key thing is it's just at a much higher valuation. So ends up being a hell of a lot of money, some of which, which attracted a little bit of criticism in general, although I think that'll be forgotten about if it trades higher. Legendary, curious for your thoughts here. It is a lot of money after they had maybe significantly already raised a lot of money from VCs. I believe the previous VC round was between 2 and 3 bill anyway. So what are your thoughts on the Monad ICO taking place? Maybe just the Monad ICO first, then we talk about the Coinbase aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm annoyed that I can't participate because it's not eligible for EU, right?
So is it all the EU out this time?
Yeah, UK is in. UK is not a part of the EU. Switzerland is in, but the EU is out for this one.
It's just so random at this point, man. Like we were talking in the Telegram chat earlier, and someone like gave the list of things, and I think before that, at least there was a little bit of a distinction between, okay, maybe private ones in the UK were allowed, but public ones are not. But now it's just completely random. It's like, okay, well, this one is now allowed. The EU is out. The EU's been in everything else before, so I've got no idea why. But sorry, I digress. Carry on.
And on the sales specifically, then I'm going to get into the Coinbase aspects of it as well. I think it's Coinbase's first thing on their own platform. So the sentiment which many people have been mirroring, that they don't want to see that fail from the get-go, is probably accurate. I also think that Coinbase's user base is way, way larger than CT. So I think, as in contrast to the Mega ETH pre-sale, like having a good track record on CT, all of those things won't really matter. So if I would be able to participate, I would probably just full send this thing, put the 100 in, then expect to get maybe 2, maybe 3K, something like that. because I don't have a good history on Coinbase. I don't think I even have a Coinbase account for that matter. And then I would just hold that, because exactly what Rahi mentioned, like this 30-day penalty, I don't want to incur that just to, turn 2K into 4K or 6K or whatever. Okay, it's not going to be 6K. I don't think it's going to go to 7.5, but we're just not going to flip that for a couple grand, when the theory that we could then see a base pre-sale happening on that platform. And for that, I don't want to have a penalty. It's not worth it just to flip it for 2 or 3K or whatever the profit would be. If you get full allo for that for whatever reason, which I had no idea how they're going to distribute that, right? If you get full allo and you make 100K and you double that up, yeah, of course, maybe take some profits, book that in. But if you get a mini allocation, I'd rather build good credibility from the get-go with Coinbase's ICO platform and see what other opportunities will come up in the future. Now, to the Coinbase specific aspect, I was initially confused why this is a different platform from the acquired duo of Echo and Sonar by Kobe. And I was like, okay, are you taking it in the direction that Coinbase's ICO platform gets now sales which are eligible for the US also, with the exception of New York, by the way. New York cannot participate in this. And will then Echo Sonar be the one that does the stuff that's open to us Europlebs? I asked Kobe that, and Kobe then replied to say, no, that is not what the intention is here. The intention is for all of the platforms to be eligible to as many jurisdictions as possible. And I think in other comments, he did clarify that Echo then is for more early ventures, whereas Coinbase ICOs are for like more late stage projects that then also apparently should come with a Coinbase listing. Whereas the Echo stuff does not, or the Echo sales, not stuff, sorry, does not mean that there is a Coinbase listing implied.
Sure.
I'm like still confused about that multi-platform strategy, to be honest, because there's also Sonar in the middle of that, and the Echo Sonar combo with like self-hosted sales on Sonar, I did understand. But yeah, I find it a lot to process that there's now basically another platform coming up. But this would be how I'd play it if I had access to the sale.
Interesting. Okay, so a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm broadly in agreement with you. I'm not necessarily in agreement with you with the part where you should hold. I mean, I see what you mean. If you only get 2 or 3K allocation and you double it, for example, is that worth selling to potentially get access to a base one next year when we don't know about that? In general, my general rule is always don't worry about the future. Don't stake things. Don't worry about the future like that. Like, take what's on the table in front of you. I think it's always dangerous trying to guess teams' intentions. I hate guessing teams' intentions. The only thing I can control is me and my buttons. And so I don't like that thought process. I think it's a smart one in this case, maybe. And if the amount that you make is like negligible to you, or a small amount, then maybe it's worth taking that bet, like as you just described. Whereas if you did end up getting a big allocation, I'd probably think, okay, don't worry about it. Just
of course,
just go for
a potential amount to you, and even
Yeah.
that if that is, you get 5K and make 10 out of that, book that profit. Maybe it's not
And
even
then-
so much about the like base sale, but I think we can agree on the fact that this is not going to be the only sale that's happening on Coinbase's ICO platform.
That's
And
true.
building a track record, if you only get negligible profit, is probably not a bad idea. Legion handles it in a similar way. They look at how you have dealt with your like past investments.
Just by the way, though, yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed that trend, and it's important to talk about that trend. What the hell's going on with that trend? Like, leave people alone with their money. Like, if you want to lock me up, then lock me up. Like this, I've always been against this in general. Like, if you want me to, as an investor, for whatever reason, if you want me to be locked up for 6 months, then lock me up for 6 months, and then let me sell when you tell me I'm allowed to sell. I'm a big believer in just the agreement. Whatever the agreement is, then honor the agreement. But this thing was like, oh yeah, you're all locked, you're all unlocked. However, we've got this sub clause that you're going to hold over your head for the next 6 months, 12 years. Well, actually, no, it'll be forever, right? It'll be forever because they're going to build your on-chain history forever. So
Garga put out a tweet saying, "Welcome to a centralized credit score in crypto," which just
yeah,
comes back to the
that's
initial thing
basically
I
what
was
it
talking
is.
about, right? On the privacy thing, I feel like we are bringing all the guardrails of all of this, like
Yeah.
financial systems, into like crypto and stuff, and we're seeing it across the space. So it is, yeah, it is very interesting. But I feel like if they're able to really get that distribution, and let's just like say, let's go back to the numbers that Ledge put out, that even if you end up putting max and you end up getting like 2-3k, and like now imagine the distribution you have with people sitting on 2-3k investment, and like they've made like 200 million and no one wants to sell. I think like it's interesting to see. I want to see how like the TGE goes, how the launch goes, but I feel like if they could get good distribution, I'll be interested to see how it performs post TGE.
Yeah, one
Also,
more
200 mil raise. God, they could just take that. They probably don't even need that at this point. Probably just take that, buy the token if you need it, and support the token post launch in like strategic ways. Okay, but I'm broadly in agreement. I think it's a buy if you have access to it, and then you just you bridge you go over the bridge. What, I don't even know what the expression is right now. I'm thinking of the next headline. Let's just leave it there. Next headline.
one more quick thought on that is
Yep.
we are not the first ones to do that, right? Robinhood has the same policy. In effect, if you participate in IPOs, I'm sharing this on the screen. You have to confirm your eligibility and agree with the terms, one of which is I'm aware of flipping policy. Investors selling or quote unquote flipping shares within the first 30 days may be restricted from future IPOs. So it's not something we came up with first.
Screw this, man. Just go back to me. Like if people do this stuff, it's just going to make people go back to the other stuff. Like just let people make money, let people trade, let people have the freedom to transact. It's kind of ridiculous that they do this. Anyway, it's probably worth a bigger rant at some point. Right, final headline we've got to get to before we close because we've got a hard stop today. This is important though. This is the news that Uniswap has decided to switch, or has proposed to switch their fee switch on. It's something that people have been looking for in crypto for a long, long time. Uniswap being one of the primary original dexes, which has always made a ton of money. So much natural activity goes towards that protocol, always making a ton of money. And it's always been a question mark, like when are you going to deliver some of that value back to the Uni token holders, whose token is like down significantly from its all-time high, because none of that value has been accruing to the holders. So what this proposal has done, and this was the founder Hayden sharing this in the last 24 hours, said that this proposal establishes a long-term model for how Uniswap ecosystem would operate, where protocol usage drives two things: Uni burn, so that there'll be tokens getting burnt, and Uniswap Labs focuses on protocol development and growth. So just to name a few of these things that they propose to do: turn on Uniswap protocol fees and use these funds to burn Uni. So it's going to be a direct burn of Uni. Send Unichain sequencer fees to the same Uni burn mechanism. Build protocol fee discount auctions to increase LP returns. Launch aggregator hooks. Burn 100 million Uni from the treasury, representing the approximate amount of Uni that would have been burned if fees were on from the beginning. That's kind of a cool thing, cool mechanics. Like, look, we know we weren't burning anything before, but if this had been on, we'll just burn that amount. So that's a pretty significant burn. And this tweet from DeFi Maestro shared like one of the impacts of thinking this through. He said the Uni FDV will drop 10% from the 100 million Uni burn. Unichain sequencer fees add $7.5 million a year of burn for Uni, with daily swap fees averaging around 2.1 million for LPs. The LP fee switch will add approximately 0.35 mil or half a mil of daily burn, or 127 mil to 182 mil yearly burn for Uni. So this is a lot of burn, is the point. So this should have a fairly significant impact. They then go on to conclude at 9.6 bill FDV, the burn will reduce the FDV to 8.64 bill, while the yearly burns will account for 1.4 to 2% of the total token supply. So obviously the token went up around 20%, 25% overnight. I think it went up even more and then has retraced a little bit. Bread also had this tweet that he put out yesterday saying that using historical numbers, this is how Uni would stack up against current buyback and tokens. So he's got a little chart here suggesting that it would be somewhere in between Hyperliquid and Pump. So not buying back, not burning as much as Hyperliquid is buying back, and not, but doing that more than what Pump is buying back. So, pretty significant. These are the top 2 protocols at the moment, the most highly revenue generating protocols who are buying back their token and doing something in that way. And so Uni is going to be right up there with them. My instinct, based on some of the reading that I've done and where that position is that it's probably still undervalued a little bit. I think the initial pump was always going to get sold off a bit. And I feel like when I get a chance to look at this valuation again, and when I get the moment to do so, this could be a good thing to get into once we see where it bottoms out after this little pullback. But it might not even be worth thinking about that too hard. Like it sounds like a buy to me. Legend, what do you think?
I think one of the most important parts of this announcement for me is here. Focus Labs on driving protocol growth and adoption, blah, 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 blah. As part of this, Labs will stop collecting fees on its interface wallet and API to supercharge distribution and the adoption of the Uniswap protocol. You said it perfectly, right? Uniswap is still very popular, but a lot of people also have stopped using it and have went to aggregators or to aggregators of aggregators. Now, if they make it more attractive to go for broader distribution again, that will be interesting how that impacts then their like potential revenue or their future revenue generation potential, and if it will be then more popular to use Uniswap again, if it will be more popular on the aggregators, because if you go to an aggregator, very rarely will you be routed through Uniswap at the moment. And I think maybe in the short to midterm that's bullish for the token, but once everyone is turning on the fee switches, we'll have a race to zero again with that. So I don't think that this is a long-term sustainable move that is now like reshaping DeFi or whatever.
Okay, interesting. Raham, do you have a take?
No, to be honest, yeah, I do think like I feel like this is just like people coming back to like more native like protocols. Like I'm not surprised it's up like 25%. I actually think it's a buy because I think it's bulletproof. It has existed for like a while and stuff. I was actually planning to get into it, but I'm also like it pumped a lot. But I do think it's an interesting value proposition.
I like it. I like money making protocols who are then going to share that with their token holders in some type of equity like arrangement. I feel like that's the only thing that I'm super interested in now. And there's an opportunity just as the news breaks for us to decide, is this undervalued in the same way Hype was undervalued at 13 or 15 when it should have been much higher? Like that's the thing you need to be deciding right now in the next 24 hours. We haven't had the chance to like do all of that groundwork ourselves, shared some ideas that people shared there with us. And that's the analysis I think we need to run. But guys, that's our show for today. That was good. That was good. A lot of interesting stuff. This is the thing. Even when the market goes quiet, even when things are settling down or turning down in some ways, always opportunities if you stay locked in and curious. So I think that's one of those moments again where you just need to stay curious, keep involved, keep involving yourself, and good things come. Thank you as always to my co-host Legendary and Rahim for joining me. Thank you to all of you guys for joining us as well. Just remind you, this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, live on X video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcasts as well. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.